Good afternoon to you all, our dear esteemed viewers. Welcome back to this week's another episode of the Community Show. This week we are going to be discussing what are the causes of the increasing domestic violence and homicide in our society in Uganda today. And joining me to discuss this wonderful topic is a panel of experts. That is Mr. Rogers Ankunda. Mr. Rogers Ankunda is a medical laboratory scientist at Joint Clinical Research Center in Mbarara. He's married to a woman called Carol Ankunda, and he's blessed with 4 children. He serves with Watoto Family Ministry at Mbarara campus. Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers Ankunda. When the time comes, I'm going to request you to maybe come on and say hello, introduce yourself, to add maybe on what I've left out, and we can begin the conversation. Right next to Mr. Ankunda Rogers, we are joined by a face that has appeared on this show before, Miss Molly Busingye Kateihwa. Miss Molly Busingye is she's married, a midwife by profession. She's the CEO at Tuhaburane, and she's a counselor and a family therapist. Those are our panelists down there. Let me just quickly get to them so that you can get to know them further and we can begin the conversation. I'll begin with Miss Molly Busingye. Kindly turn on your video microphone and say hello to the viewers, then I'll get to Mr. Rogers and we can start the conversation. Molly?
Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to appreciate the organizers of this event and the whole house. My name is Molly Busingye Kateihwa. I'm a midwife, I'm a counselor and a Christian mentor. I'm a CEO at Tuhaburane, which gives Derek a hard time to pronounce. Yeah, I'm also a family therapist. Yeah, and it's a great opportunity to be on such platform. And I hope to share knowledge, learn from you and unlearn. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Molly Busingye. We are definitely looking forward to hearing you to delve and talk about this topic. Mr. Rogers Ankunda, kindly come on and say hello to the viewers before we begin the conversation.
Thank you very much, Drake. Good afternoon, viewers. I'm Rogers Ankunda, as you have heard. Number one, before it all, I am saved by the grace of God, born again. I gave my life to Christ when I was 12 years old, way back in the year 1993. And I am married by the grace of God to Carol. And just as Drake has introduced me well, I work in Mbarara with Joint Clinical Research Center as a laboratory manager. And I also serve with Watoto Family Ministry at the Mbarara campus. I am so privileged. It is an honor to be here to talk about these causes of domestic violence and homicides in today's society. Thank you very much, the organizers of this show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers and Mrs. Molly, for taking time to join us in this conversation. Now, let us delve deeper into understanding this topic. I'll begin with you, Mr. Rogers Ankunda. You are a medical personnel, and that said, definitely this is a topic that I think we have to start from the medical perspective and get to understand the root causes and contributing factors that are leading to the increasing domestic violence and homicide cases in our society and Uganda at large. So then my question to you is in line of the root causes and contributing factors is, what are the underlying factors contributing to the increasing domestic violence and homicide cases in Uganda and in our society today? Mr. Rogers?
I'm going to talk about the causes of domestic violence and homicides in marriage. because society, domestic violence is broad, but I would want to specifically narrow down to marriage, because family is the smallest unit of the society, and it all stems from a marital relationship and then spreads outward. Now, if you want me to be academic, we all know what domestic violence is. And so I'm not going to really define it, because domestic violence is really hurting each other in a relationship at home. You can inflict harm both physically or verbally, you know. And so domestic violence is really bringing harm to each other in simple words. And when you look at just a snapshot, a lot of research has been done on domestic violence. If you just go into a Google engine and type in causes of domestic violence, definitely we are going to get so many. In Uganda, if I may just summarize what research that was done in the slum of Kamwocha, the reported causes of domestic violence in Kamwocha just alone, and which you can say they cut across all Uganda, all over Uganda, and probably even internationally. Number one was lack of mutual trust. Number two, disputes over property. First of all, if I may just talk about the trust issue. If someone does not trust their partner, then they are going to end up having quarrels, and then they end up even inflicting pain on one another. Disputes over property, especially in marital relationships. We know that property has been a very major cause of domestic violence. Poor communication. The last time I was on air somewhere, I'm sure what caused you people to invite me to this show, I was talking about communication in marriage. So poor communication in relationships is one of the causes of domestic violence. Lack of sexual satisfaction, alcohol, and or drug abuse. Alcohol abuse, number one cause of domestic violence in Uganda especially, and even internationally. Food insecurity. If there's no food in the home, it is going to raise a lot of flares. People are going to, because people cannot stand hunger. So there's going to be violence. It's going to be a cause of violence. Cultural norms and beliefs. You have heard somewhere people say that for a Muganda woman, if she's not beaten, then she doesn't feel loved. You can imagine. So cultural beliefs and cultural norms. I must beat my wife. It is normal. Character or personality. Now that is a problem of temperaments. I know Molly, being here, she's an expert when it comes to talking about temperaments. If you do not know the kind of person you got into a relationship with, their character and their personality, then if you rub them the wrong way, you know, they are going to, they may turn out to be violent. So the kind of person you are with. Marital infidelity. This one, of course, we know. The other day on the news, you hear it on the news all the time. I just heard the other day on the news, a man cut off his wife's head. But this is what he listened to on the news every day, because he suspected her to be cheating on him. Just suspected, and he cut off his head. You know, then relatives and friends, of course, third parties coming into a relationship. Poverty is one of the causes. So I can be academic about this, and we know these causes of domestic violence. I know that all the people here, we are elite people. Whoever is tuned in, if you can afford to tune in to Space TV, we are elite people. We hear the news all the time. It's on TV, it's on social media, it's on radio, it is everywhere. We have been listening and watching these things in our societies, and we know the causes. But as I told you, the real cause, as I told you, I am born again. I serve as a family chair at Watoto Ministries, at Watoto Family Ministry. I lead the family ministry at Watoto. And so, as we talk about all these causes, today they have become more pronounced because of the media visibility. In my culture, women were always beaten. It was normal. It was very normal. No woman would report being beaten because everyone was always being beaten. You know, women were always told to keep their mouths shut if they wanted peace. But even then, men would always find a reason to beat their wives, even if they didn't say anything. If he came back drunk and just found something small, he would just beat up his wife. And so it was normal for a woman to be beaten. This, however, I must say, now, I don't want us to dwell just on the causes. The real cause, just like Jesus summarized the whole law into 2 laws, and I want to come to narrow it down. Jesus summarized the whole law into 2. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. And the second is this, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Now for me, that is the foundation for the causes of domestic violence. Paul summarized the instructions of household living into 2, between a man and a woman. I told you I'm going to narrow down in marriage because that is where it emanates. Before it goes to children, before it goes to other people, it starts in a marriage. Paul summarized it in 2. And he said, husbands, love your wives, and wives, submit to your husbands. Now, Drake, you can cut me at any one point if you want maybe clarification on what I've said. I told you that I have been, I have listed the causes, and we can talk about, excuse me, we can talk about each of the causes. We can single it out, but we know these causes, Drake. We know these causes of domestic violence in our societies. But what is the real cause? The real cause for me is that there is no love in our families, in our marriages. Right. The love of a man for his wife has died. And therefore, there is also no submission from the wife to her husband. That is, for me, the root cause. I'm going to build on that if you allow me to.
I'll get back to you on that later, and particularly on what you bring out. You bring out very key and very important issues. You highlight approximately like 7 to 8 causes of gender-based violence, but your argument is laid on the foundation that you see the reason as to why you focus on the unit of family, particularly marriage, that the causes of gender-based violence and homicides in our society today are premised on lack of mutual trust, dispute over property, food insecurity, lack of communication, cultural beliefs and norms, character of the person, infidelity, and poverty. And the most important thing, or your fundamental argument, focuses on lack of love in our families. I'll get back to you on that point. Let me invite Molly. Mrs. Molly, when you listen to the submission of my brother Rogers, he submits from a very informed and Christian-like point of view, which is very important in informing our argumentation or our discussion today. And Mrs. Molly, you are a therapist, and there are a number of issues, or you have handled cases of people coming possibly on grounds, the argument that Mr. Rogers raises among the causes of cultural beliefs and norms. Right now, we are still understanding the root causes and contributing factors. So my question to you then is what do cultural and society norms, what do society norms and cultural beliefs play a role in this issue of the increasing gender-based violence and homicide cases in our country, Uganda, today? Mrs. Molly?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Rogers, for that sharing. Yeah, I would like to, before I answer that question, to emphasize also on the family part. Why? Because personally, I also believe that the root of everything that is happening today in the society does not mushroom from anywhere else. It mushrooms from families. Because like we all know that family is a basic unity. Family is the nursery bed. Family is like a factory, and it's the backbone of society where everything comes from. Every adult that we see in a society today has roots from somewhere in a certain family. So how they were raised morally, spiritually, and how they were taught to interact with society and to handle stress, the emotional part of it, how it was built in a child, is how they are going to respond in the generation ahead. I can summarize this by saying that a broken child is a broken adult, and a moralist society is a godless society. Godliness breeds uprightness, and a morally well-brought child will have the summary of the 10 commandments that Mr. Rogers talked about. You love God and love neighbors. So if someone loves God and they love people, there are certain things they will not do, regardless of how much pressure they have and the present troubles and pressures that we meet in a society. So I can say that a moralist, I can say that a godless society is a moralist society. So, and the reason why we see that nowadays we are having the laws coming up now, and now the parliament is bringing laws here and here, is because they are trying to control the community, they are trying to control the people in the society, and yet those laws cannot work. What can work is going back to the families, and we do things right and rise up children and people who are going to be responsible, who are going to be morally upright. Like we see a table sits on four legs. A person cannot survive seated on one leg. You must have the emotional, you must have the spiritual, you must have the physical, you must have the psychological part of you well built. And so going back to your question, saying that what is causing, how the culture is affecting culture, norms and tradition, how it is affecting us in a society. Of course, culture is good. And those norms that we have, in fact, the reason why we have norms is to give us the direction, is to give us guidelines, is to give us boundaries on where we should pass and how far we should go. But if those morals are not written on someone's heart, if those norms are not written in someone's heart, if those norms or values or principles that guide the society, that guide people, are not cultivated from the heart, they are just written on papers, someone will not follow them, because you know that naturally human beings, we have a tendency of rebellion. We want to rebel away from authority, because authority, it makes us feel those goosebumps. It makes us feel as if we are being controlled. So we have that natural tendency of wanting to rebel against the roles and against the norms, against the values of the society. But the solution goes back, like I said, they must be cultivated from childhood, and not just give them rules, but give them that moral principle behind them. You tell a child, you should not steal. Why shouldn't you steal? Because when you steal, this, you are robbing the other person an opportunity. I'm giving an example. You should not take what is yours. You should not do this, because when you do this, it affects the other person. And when it affects the other person, it affects the society. That is what we are lacking in the society. We are giving people roles and principles, but we're not giving them the moral reason why they should not do it. And that is why people have a tendency of wanting to rebel, because someone is like, when I do it, what will happen? So society is good, naturals are good, and culture, but we should also see there are those values and norms of the culture which are good, but there are those ones which are suppressing. So that is why we should draw a line between what really is good for us and what. But nowadays, we have seen that women even can add value to society. They can add value to families. So when you listen to women, they also have an idea which can transform a society. So when you say that women should not talk in culture, then that means you're subjecting a person. And when you subject a person, these will be the reasons of the results would be the things we are seeing today, because when someone is feeling suppressed, they would want to fight back by doing all these other things we are talking about, the causes of domestic violence. So in conclusion, I can say that we must be on that. We must come to that point where we see and between the culture norms and values, and also bring out those moral principles that can govern us as a society, so that we stop those homicide and domestic violence issues that keep rising up, because those are just branches, but there's always an issue, there's always a taproot, there's always a cause, a major cause, and which I take back to moral degradation, moralness, and ungodliness.
All right. Thank you very much. I pick a very important point that you raised, that a godless society is a moralless society. And you seem to also side with what Rogers was arguing, or is arguing, that for us to solve these increasing cases, we need to get back to the smallest units of our society, which is the family, because it informs morals. Regardless of the laws we have in place, it is from families that we inform morals, which then brings me back to Rogers. Rogers, you were trying to build up on a very key point, which is a lack of love in our families. That if we do not love ourselves, you highlight or quote the Bible, that the Bible says we need to love ourselves, love our neighbors as we love ourselves. But the love we see that is the lack of love that we're experiencing in our societies today is leading to a number of these increasing domestic violence cases and homicides. So then, as we wrap up on the issue of root causes and contributing factors on these issues, kindly expound on that point of lack of love in our family, but then also answer my second question, which is in line of, could a possibility of economic, because you mentioned the point of poverty, are economic stressors or financial insecurity contributing to the violence with households? That means the increasing poverty in our society today. Hint on that point as well. Rogers?
Thank you very much, Drake, once again. And I would like to thank my sister Molly for that very good discussion that she made there. And she brings out very important points. Yes. Now, maybe before I talk about, I delve into the lab, let's talk about that economic issue that Drake has raised. Definitely, economic or poverty can be a cause of domestic violence. When there is no money at home, there is stress. When a man cannot put food on his table, there is stress from the woman. If a woman cannot feed her children, definitely there cannot be peace in a home. That goes without saying, you know. And so this economy, a man might go out there and really the whole day he's scratching his head, he's working hard, but you know, he's not affording to bring food home. And therefore, there cannot be peace in such a home. So poverty definitely is a contributing factor, but we both know that it's not just about money, because we know that there are very rich people who have it all. The woman drives a different car. They have so many vehicles in their yard, but again, they are so violent towards each other. There is no love. There is no peace in that home. They stay in golofa, what you may call in golofa houses, a storied house, tiled marble floor. But I mean, there is no peace in that home. The man is hitting his wife. The woman is cursing and abusing her husband. There is no trust. There is no respect. You have heard these stories, you know? So it's not just about money. The money can be there. And if it is too much money, definitely, it is also going to be a problem. You know, when we're making these marriage vows, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, for better, for worse. Now, Molly brings out a very important point about child upbringing. A home that is godly, a home that has God at the center, a family that has God at the center of their hearts, a home where there is love, not the love that the world gives, but the love of God. When Jesus said, love one another as I have loved you. And Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 28, that a man should love his wife as he loves himself, for no one hates his own body. Because our wives, going back to the family unit, wives and husbands, the day we get married, we become one flesh. When we go back to the Garden of Eden, marriage, why I cannot really put marriage separated from God's word and from God, it's because I am a Bible-believing Christian, and I know you guys are Bible-believing Christians, because you have been baptized. I see you have Christian names to yourselves. And so I know, and when you want to wed, you want to go to church and be wed. So we cannot separate God from marriage, because God is the one who instituted marriage. He is the founder. He is the author of marriage. The day he created Eve and brought her to Adam in the Garden of Eden, that is the first marriage we witness in God's word. Therefore, he said, therefore it is not good for a man to be alone. Let us make a suitable helper. And then he put a man to sleep and took out his rib and created a woman and presented her to man. And for the first time, the most romantic words that ever came from a man were from Adam. This is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. So we see how the marriage began in the garden before sin came into the world. Now, coming now fast forward, why I cannot separate this. Let me give you my culture, where I come from. I told you before that women were beaten every day. But in the 1930s, the revival came to our people, and men and women surrendered their lives to Christ. You know, so, and the man who surrendered his life to Christ and the woman who surrendered his life to Christ, they stopped drinking alcohol. They stopped infidelity, because that was the norm. Their lifestyles were just around alcohol and sleeping around. And definitely peace in such a home. So when men surrendered their lives to Christ, then peace came into their home. Peace came into their home. And some of them went ahead and started calling their wives mama. and started calling their husbands Tata. Now, you cannot beat someone whom you call your mother, and you cannot disrespect someone whom you call your father. So what were they trying to do by doing that? They were trying to bring down egos, the female egos, the masculine egos, to bring it down to a law, to a minimum law. To call your wife mama, to call your husband Tata. You see, in the Bible, Sarah referred to her husband Abraham as my Lord. You know, and so that kind of respect, we see it among couples that have surrendered their lives to Christ, especially in the revival times. And so the violence stopped. Women who were beaten every night, those families which were blessed enough to receive Christ in their lives, they stopped beating their wives and the violence stopped. So I must say, the real cause, that's why my point is that the real cause is not about money, it's about love. When love comes into our homes, then we know how to bring up our children. Recently, we're doing a book, Growing Kids God's Way, and Molly is part of that class, Growing Kids God's Way. And so when you bring up this child with love, when this child sees that there is love between their parents, between the father and the mother, and they bring them up with certain principles and with a certain standard of love and kindness and caring for community, caring for others, there is no way that child is going to turn out to be a monster, you know, later in life. It is because parents have ignored this upbringing of children in love. Themselves, they don't love each other. They do not respect one another. So they bring up children in a very broken home. And these children definitely in future, what they see is what they are going to practice, because that is all they know. But if children are brought up in a home where there is love, that is all they will know to communicate also when they get their spouses. And so Molly brought that point out, and I just wanted to build on it, that bringing up children in a loving relationship is very, very important. And so Christian households need to practice this, and we need to preach this to even the world, you know, and preach love. Wives, submit your husband. Husbands, love your wives. And so therefore, the real cause is that there is no love from men and no submission from women. Now, one might ask, what is love? 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 to 8 says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrong. That means it forgives. It does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Now we know that you approach a woman, Drake, you are a witness. If you want to marry this girl, you are going to approach her. And because she's beautiful and you like her and you love her, and you will say all these sweet things to her. Where do those sweet things go when you finally get into marriage and then you start battering her? It is because love has disappeared. And why has it disappeared? Because the author of love is not seated in your heart. If Christ is at the center of our hearts, we can only express love, because he who loved the world and gave his life for the world is in our hearts. So when we call him into our hearts, that will be the foundation of love in our families. And therefore, we shall only speak the love language. We shall express love to our spouses. And this domestic violence and homicides will cease. So the root cause, the real reason, is not all these are all superficial, but the root cause is that we have taken God out of the picture, we have taken God out of the relationship, and yet he is the author of family and marriage. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That has been a very wonderful submission. I don't know whether to call it submission. I don't know whether to call it a preaching, a sermon. But it was powerful. Love is very crucial and it's very important. It's really a stronghold, a foundation to all this that we're talking about. Molly, let us just take the conversation to the aspect of support systems and victim services. At the moment, we know we have all these victims of domestic violence. People have lost their lives on grounds of domestic violence as homicides. As a country, what support systems and services are available for victims of domestic violence and their families? And then the other question is, how can communities and organizations work together to provide better support for survivors? Molly?
Yeah, of course, the support system, we recently, of course, due to the uprise of mental health cases, we see that the mental health teams are rising up to take on the lead. And of course, one of the things, of course, is counseling. People should seek counseling because we all know that a problem, so shared is a problem. So, but you know, with our African attitude, we do not believe in counseling. We think if someone is going for counseling, they should be drug addicts, they should be mental disturbed people, but counseling is for everyone. Even me myself, who is speaking right now, who is a counselor, me myself, I need a counselor because at the bottom line, I'm a human being. At times, I'm also overwhelmed by situations. So we need to seek counseling. We need to seek support systems. We have counseling in churches. We have counseling in societies. I have seen government nowadays has even put units of offices at hospitals of domestic violence offices where they cater and support such people. So we should seek counseling. We should speak out. Let us not die in silence. And also the church has always provided the counseling to people. And also we have relatives, we have friends, we have mentors. All those are support systems. We need friends who can really speak value in us, not these people who just you have them for happening, for just gambling, but people who don't add value to you. We need better friends. Like Rogers was saying in marriages, nowadays people don't want to speak. You find someone, they are married couple, but you don't have a mentor. Each one of us needs a mentor because there's where you have not reached, where someone has reached. You need someone who has gone ahead of you. At times that you think that it is a big situation, it is like something small, only that you're seeing it from your own perspective. You think it is big, but when you talk to someone, they just break it down and you see something that has taken you a month thinking about causing sleepless nights. Someone talks over it in 5 minutes, like, hey, I never saw it that way. Why? Because that's how God created us. We are dependent. We are supposed to fellowship. We are supposed to link up with one another. We are intertwined with one another. We need one another in every area. So the support system is everywhere, only that now people are proud. We must put down our guards and seek counseling. If you have something you're going through, do not just sit home and say, if I speak, people will laugh at me, they will think I'm weak, they will think this and about you. No, seek counseling, because when you seek counseling, you see better, you see things a better way than how you see. Even in our cultures, the culture we are talking about itself, we see that even in culture, in history, people, the old men, they would sit on fire, men would sit on fire and talk over things. Women go for fetching, they would go for firewood, when they're grinding, and they would be talking over issues. But it is now our culture that because of this technology, someone can sit in their home a whole week, they are on a phone, chatting with someone who is in America, thinking that they are chatting with someone. And when I have a friend in America, you have never seen a friend who doesn't know what you eat, a friend who doesn't even know how you look, a friend who doesn't even know which neighborhood you're surrounded in. That is my friend. So we no longer want to commit. And because we do not want to commit, because you know, when you commit a relationship to someone who is accountable to you, to someone you're accountable to, someone who will rebuke you, someone who will tell you you're doing wrong, someone who will say that you're going off boundaries, you feel as if your freedom is being clinched on. You don't want someone to enter in your space. And because you don't want someone to enter in your space, you end up doing stupid mistakes. because in the name of freedoms, we must allow people in our lives. If you're married, you need another couple which is married who have gone ahead of you, who are older than you, and even you need people of the same who are on the same level with you, and you also need people who are below you, because you're molding down someone who is below you. You are associating with someone on your level. You have like common problems. You also have someone ahead of you who can show potholes which are coming, like there's a pothole here, so avoid it. So we must go back to fellowship. We must go back to association. We must go back to working together. We must go back to counseling, to churches, and the best thing we also must go back to the word of God is the medicine to all the moral cancers and all moral and the immoral and the social and the spiritual problems in society. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Molly. That has been very, very important and very interesting submissions there. And as we, reach towards the last 20 minutes of our conversation, I just want us to, Mr. Rogers, to quickly come and talk about education and awareness. You are a huge proponent, or you're a huge proponent arguing from the perspective that we need to instill love in our families. We need to capture, we must have love in our hearts for us to combat this disease of gender-based violence and homicides that are increasing in our societies today. But however, as you also champion the message of love, how can education and awareness campaigns help prevent domestic violence and homicide? And then two, what role can schools and community organizations play in educating people about healthy relationships and conflict resolution? Rogers?
Thank you very much, Drake. Sorry, I've had to change location because of some interruption. So I may not put my video on now, but I hope you can hear me very well.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you were talking about education. Can you please come again on that point, on that question?
My question is in line of education and awareness. I just have two questions for you. That one, you are a huge proponent of love. You've been singing the song that we need to have love in our hearts, have love in our family. So the questions are, how can education and awareness campaigns help prevent domestic violence and homicide? But then two, you are a church leader and you also do some work in the medical field. So what roles can schools and community organizations play in educating people about healthy relationships and conflict resolution?
So thank you very much, Drake. Now on education definitely is very, very important. We need to have our schools, for example, have a part of the curriculum. I know that there is there are like courses of religious education. We used to have physical education. Molly talked about something where we used to, people in old used to sit at a fireplace. Even in homes, people, of course, today do not have time for that. But at school, there should be part of the curriculum where children are mentored on things to do with how to live with other people in community. You see, yes, I am an advocate of love. Love one another. You see, when you look at this, the 10 Commandments, God was commanding the children of Israel, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not do all these things. In homes today, these are things, like they say, charity begins at home. These things, charity is also called love in King James Version. For example, love is referred to as charity. Now, charity beginning at home, meaning that parents are supposed to teach their children these things at a fireplace. When the children are home, like in holiday, do we even have time to educate them? This kind of education is supposed to be in our homes. But we know that parents today do not have the time for their children. But this kind of education, so when you send children to school, they're supposed to go for academic things. But even in schools, because we know that children spend more time in schools, there should be part of the curriculum is how to live harmoniously with one another. Children should be brought up in a way that they know how to live, how they can. Today, children have a lot of entitlement because of the way they have been brought up. There's a lot of entitlement with children. They do not know how to live with other people. Some children are brought up just alone in a home, and everything is to them, and so they do not know how to live with their neighbors. This is so commonly pronounced in Western cultures, but we see it cropping in our own culture today. People today have even started homeschooling. I cannot accept that one for me, honestly, because then you are taking away the social aspect from this child. So you see that the grassroots is suffering because of westernization. You know, we are so busy for our own selves. We are so busy for our own children. So the child upbringing is so affected. So the social aspect of a child is very, very important. When they go to school, then you should tell them, when you go to school, you teach them how to share, you teach them how to work together, how to seek for help. You know, some children do not know even how to seek for help, you know, even from their teachers or from their peers, because they have been brought up in an environment that is so self-centered, you know. So that self-centeredness is very dangerous. People should know how to seek for help. People should know how to say sorry. People should know how to say please. You know, some of these words, when you're asking for something, you don't just demand. Some children demand things, certain things from their parents. In some families, when a child sneezes, the parent runs, you know, to pick whatever they want. You know, when they walk with a child in a supermarket or in a shop, and the child says, I want this, you cannot say no to a child. Children should learn to say no. They should also learn when a no is said, they respect it from a parent or from a teacher or from a friend, you know. And so there should not be that sense of entitlement. The world does not revolve just around you, but, you know, many children have been brought up in that way, that, you know, everything revolves around them. And that is because some of these parents, some of them who are single parents, we know that single mothers, I must give this as an example, they sometimes over pamper their children, especially when they are well-to-do. So you find that there is the child is getting only one is growing one directional. So my pastor says that some people are raised and others are grown. We want to have children who have been raised, people who will be responsible citizens in society, raised. Others merely grow. So if you're the kind of parent who is bringing up your child the way they want, then, and you're not taking time to give them principles of life and how they can live with other people in society and how they can be social beings, then of course they are being only grown. They are just growing, just like wild plants or wild animals, and so there is no sense of social responsibility. And the other question that so what about education? We should incorporate that in our maybe even curricula. But of course, that kind of education, I must say, is supposed to be at home. Is supposed to be at home. Of course, when we send our children to boarding school, they only come back home for just 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then we send them back. And while they're at home, we are busy looking for school fees for another term. So in our schools where the children are spending more time, I must say that education bit must be there. We should encourage, Ministry of Education maybe should put that in the curriculum on how to bring up these children as social beings and having a social responsibility. The other question, I'm sorry, I'm dwelt on that one. The other question you brought about, the second question, please, Drake.
The second question, I think you've handled it, which is about roles of schools and community organizations. What do they play in educating people about healthy relationships and conflict resolution?
Yes, so the schools and these organizations, we should advocate for, you know, children being social beings. They should children should know how to say sorry. They should know how to say please. They should know how to live together harmoniously with other people. When they are denied something, it should not be. They should not throw tantrums. So these things are very, very important in a child's upbringing, and therefore we see them even when someone grows up and is an adult. Sometimes when they have not been brought up in that way, they express some of these things in society. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We are almost reaching the top of the hour, but before we, wind up the conversation, it would be very important. It wouldn't be fair enough for us to not have the conversation and not talk about mental health and counseling, which is the right person to respond to us about mental health and counseling. So, Miss Molly, my question to you is, to what extent do mental health issues contribute to domestic violence and domestic homicides? And then the other thing is, are there sufficient mental health resources and counseling?
Yes, I will start with the question 2, which says that there are enough for mental health facilities and counseling. In fact, you break to at that point, but I think you wanted to ask if they are enough, if there's enough capacity to handle that. I can say yes, because like I said previously, recently, mental health capacities, counselors, psychologists, all that category, it has been rising up, and I can, in fact, there has been even a need, or what do I call it? A promotion of, so that we can have a counselor at least in every society. We can have counselors and psychologists in every organization, because when we are talking about these mental health problems, they are not only happening in homes, they are happening at places of work, happening in schools, they are happening everywhere, every person, and in any society and organization and community. We have mental health happening even right now. And the other first questions you asked, to what extent is that even before I answer that, I wanted to say something about what you asked about, Rogers, about schools. Schools nowadays have even become breeding grounds for evil practices. If you ask most of the students where they are learning all those funny behaviors and what they tell you it is in schools. So schools themselves are sick. And when we're talking about schools, we are not talking about buildings. We are talking about people who are in those schools, because a school is just a building. But what makes it a school are the people, are the students, the teachers, and all the other people, the staff, the non-working staff, and the teaching staff and the non-teaching staff. So some time back, when my kids come from school, they get time to tell me how the school was, what we went through. So one time, one of my child used to fear to participate in class. So I kept on encouraging her, please participate. When you participate, even if you've given a wrong answer, it is okay, because you're learning and gaining confidence. So one time she gathered all the confidence, and when the teacher asked, she raised her hand. When she gave an answer, the teacher, of course, I think it was a wrong answer, and the teacher replied and told her that your answer is smelly. She came home when she was shattered. It's like, Mom, can you imagine? I raised my hand and I answered for the first time, and the teacher told me that my answer was smelling, and I felt embarrassed in school. So if I was not there to give her emotional support and correct her and tell her, maybe also the teacher himself was angry, had issues, so just forgive him and continue participating. But Pastor, for you have gained the courage of answering and keep on answering. So that goes back to even the teachers, where we send our teachers, our students themselves, the teachers themselves, they need counseling, they need help, the headmasters need help, the parents need help, the students need help. So this, when I say that each one of us need a counselor, this is what I mean. even the schools themselves, like we need to incorporate counselors in all schools. And when we talk about this, some of these professionals, they are not professionals for people who, like, you do it because you had no other choice. They need people who have a heart for it, because most times you find people who are doing these courses are people like who have failed, they didn't have money, so you went and did just a certificate for counseling. So you find yourself in a school, but you don't have a passion for people. So we need to have counselors and psychologists and mentors who have a heart for people, who are called for this. So that when we have a counselor in school, he or she's not going to be someone who's adding more stress to the students, but someone who is helping them, someone who's showing them light. So I can say that yes, the capacity is enough, is there. Yes, it might not be very enough, but at least it is way better than it was before. And with this awareness, now we have awareness going on in schools, in communities, in hospitals. People who are into this area, they are busy advertising, and even the parliament itself is advocating for this. So we need more. We need more advertisements. We need more enlightenment. We need more of counseling almost in every center, because we see this mental health, they are affecting people. We are seeing people run mad. We are seeing people depressed. We are seeing suicides. We are seeing the rate of drunkenness and drug abuse and psychological stress, emotional stress, loss of life, adultery, divorce, separation. All these are rising up. Are rising up because people are depressed, people are suffering, and people are going through mental health, and they have no one to talk to. And even those whom they talk to, at times they are not sufficient with knowledge. They are not equipped enough. So we need more of equipping people, and we need more people to advertise and tell people that it is okay to open up. And then maybe one of the things I could end with is one of the causes that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't talk about: personality disorders. Just like we have normal personalities and temperaments, we also have people who have abnormal personalities. Like things like you've had people who are paranoid, you've had narcissistic people who are narcissistic. These are people who are like mentally sick, but their personalities are abnormal, and those ones need to seek they need to seek for help, because when they are addressed, there is a remedy for them. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Molly. We are reached the top of the hour, so quickly I'll get to you, Mr. Rogers. As you give us your concluding remarks, what prevention strategies would you then recommend? The question is, are there some effective prevention strategies that can be implemented at the individual, community, and society levels? Maybe you can respond to that and also give us your concluding remarks. Rogers?
Once again, thank you, Drake, and thank you, Molly, for your submission. So preventive strategies, once again, I think I will agree with what Molly has been saying. She has probably partly answered that question. To have counselors, people who are going to address these issues in our societies, from a public health perspective, really, we should have these health clubs where people can go and find a counselor. They should be littered all over in our town centers. She mentioned in schools, in health facilities. Of course, we see them more in maybe health facilities. Today in Uganda, for example, we have not yet reached that point where people are very actively seeking for counsel, for therapists. Even in developed countries, they see it as there is even a way they term these therapists. They don't want to visit these therapists because they think if they visit them, then probably they are mentally unstable. They have put a ring around therapists to mean only for mentally disturbed people. But no, these counselors, they are trained to help people live better in society, because their training is wholesome. you know. But of course, I cannot fail also to say that the church is very important in playing a role in this, you know. So people should embrace going to church and finding help, because at some of these centers, campuses in these churches, you find there is someone to talk to. You always find someone to talk to. It can be a reverend, it can be a lay reader, it can be a counselor. So it is always important. So the remedies really is to, first of all, the child upbringing, the things that we've been talking about, but also having these embracing the counselors, the counseling profession in our country, and visiting these therapists to help us really both at a community level, and then of course the national level. They need to advocate for this, you know. They need to advocate it even in parliament. They should even talk about it, because we see a lot of people mentally even disturbed due to domestic violence. Domestic violence and homicides has caused some people, children and women and even men, to be mentally unstable. They cannot reason well. They cannot therefore be productive in society. So government should advocate for this counseling sessions and have people, and encourage these counseling units to be all over the place, so that people can always walk in. Of course, it's not easy. It has to be, mainly now it's done on private arrangement. But I think government needs to maybe institute it, so that it is maybe in health facilities, and someone is paid for that, and so that people can always visit these clinics, these counselors, professional counselors, to seek for help. Yeah, so that is what I have to say. And conclusively, I must say that the root cause of domestic violence, for me, is the foundation is lack of love, as I said, in our homes, and poor upbringing of our children. It is usually the root cause. When these children grow up in a broken home and broken families, what do you expect? They are definitely going to do the same things that probably they saw in their families. So the love needs to get back. We need to love our wives. We need to love our children. We need to love our spouses like Christ loves the church. That is how we should practice love. If we love one another, all these problems, I'm telling you, they are going to be managed. We are going to be able to manage all these challenges in society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rogers. And thank you for spreading the message of love. Love is key in seeing that it's actually the only solver to all the problems that we are facing with the increasing domestic violence and homicides. Let me get to Mrs. Molly Busingye. Let us get your concluding remarks. Mrs. Molly?
Yeah. I would say this statement, that the solution for our future is not with us, but is in our children. So if we want a better tomorrow or a better society, we must instill better values, principles, and norms in our children, because for us, we are already living in our future. The next generation is in our future. But what we put in our children will determine whether we will have a better tomorrow, or we will have destroyed or damaged the future. Then the other thing I would say in conclusion is that broken people raise broken society. Ungodliness and morallessness is the reason of the domestic violence, corruption, insecurities, every other chaos we see in our homes, in our societies, and in our nation and in the world. So if we want to solve all these things, we must seek help. We must raise our children with morals and values which govern the community and also govern the society. The last one, I want to talk about emotional intelligence. Each one of us, we have a role to sit ourselves down and we work on our emotional intelligence capacity, because it is the one which is going to give us the anchor, the power, the backbone to fight stress, to fight all these issues that come gunning for our attention, gunning for our mental health. Thank you very much. I remain Molly Busingye Kateihwa. Thank you for today.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Molly Busingye, for those wonderful submissions. Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers Ankunda, for taking time to spread the message of love and message of care for us to live in a harmonious and peaceful society. Otherwise, this conversation was brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance. Tonight, we have been discussing what are the causes of the increasing domestic violence and homicides in our society today. And joining me to discuss this conversation, it has been Mrs. Molly Busingye and Mr. Rogers Ankunda, who have done justice to tonight's conversation. I remain your host, Douglas Drake Onen is my name, and thank you very much, Civic Space TV, the technical crew, for making sure that the conversation is up and running for our viewers to catch it on time. Otherwise, I said have a blessed week, and bye-bye. Thank you.